Everyone, this is Independence Live. We're live in Dundee this morning. Now, we've got Dr. Tony Cox, who has been to the courts and has been in for sentencing. And Tony, can you just give us the news?
Yeah, I was given a sentence of 150 hours community service on a Section 38 threatening behaviour, whilst I was conducting somebody into a work capability assessment. I mean, the bare facts of the case are a highly vulnerable woman, major anxiety issues, accompanied into the work capability assessment. I was informed after waiting about 3/4 of an hour that I was barred from the building without any evidence being produced for this. I demanded to see the manager. I raised my voice, demanded to see the manager. We kept waiting a further 20 minutes, after which I was informed that the manager was no longer there. They told me that because I refused to leave the building when asked, that the police had been called. At that point, it became obvious to me that the client that I was with, who was also a client of mine when I was working as a welfare rights officer, and that's the capacity that I actually met her in as a client through the Boots Bank Centre. It was my opinion that she was in any kind of fit condition to continue with the assessment, so we left the assessment centre. After about 15 minutes, the police arrived, went in, were there for about 5 minutes, came out, asked me my name, I confirmed my name. They then told me I was under arrest. I then pointed out to them there was a number of witnesses who could actually confirm that no crime had actually been committed, put my arm up to point to them, and they pulled my arm down, put it behind my back, and frog marched me to a police vehicle. Was then detained for 27 hours in police custody before being seen the next morning, because I was actually in breach of bail conditions from a previous case which involved a similar situation. I was advocating on behalf of somebody at the Arbroath Job Centre, and in that case the substantive charges were actually dropped. So that's the bare bones of the case. With regards to the way that the case was actually conducted, we have very grave doubts about the impartiality of the court, particularly the sheriff. I'm just glad that he didn't have the death sentence actually available to him, because I would have fully expected to walk in there and see him wearing a black cap and staring at me very somberly. It's quite clear to me that the sheriff just did not like the cut of my jib. And in his verdict, the verdict that he gave, he justified it on the grounds that he preferred the evidence of the Crown witnesses to those of the defence witnesses. Now, it took us a great deal of effort in terms of the lawyers to actually placate and reassure the vulnerable woman that was actually in with that she should turn up in court. And when she did turn up in court, she actually broke down, such was her anxiety, the levels of her anxiety. When the case was adjourned, she then returned to court and gave evidence through CCTV footage. And the view of the sheriff, after all those efforts on the part of this highly vulnerable client who was put through hell as a result of this case, was that he did not believe any of her evidence, and he preferred the evidence of the Crown witnesses. And I must say, the Crown witnesses, 3 of them, who are all assessors or receptionists in the assessment centre at Maximus, their evidence was highly contradictory and rivetingly real problems. And how I've been found guilty, I just do not know. I mean, I think it raises issues with regards to the nature of the criminal justice system, and particularly the partial role that the police have been playing in this. The police basically acted as the DWP's little helpers in this instance and in other instances. It's not the first time we've had the police called on us. I'm sure it won't be the last. Now, my argument is, with regards to this verdict, that this has a dramatic impact on them. There's only Section 38, but what it means is fundamentally they won't be able to probably get a job as a welfare rights officer again, not with a threatened behaviour charge over the head, and it may have implications for the other work that I'm involved in as a lecturer and as a tour guide. To give me 150 hours community service, which is obviously going to eat into my ability, and I've got to complete that within 6 months, it'll eat into my ability to actually conduct the voluntary work that I'm doing with the SUWN. It's clearly a political. So, we see it now that we're actually in a fight. serious fight with the British state. And to be quite honest with you, my biggest regret is that not what impact this is actually having on myself, but the consequences it might actually have for other welfare rights activists who are in a similar position. Because this is basically giving the green light for the building up of ridiculous insinuations and charges against us, and the burden of proof that's actually on the DWP and the Maximus employees in this instance was pathetic.
Okay, we've got Sarah Glynn. You're also a welfare rights officer, right?
Well, I'm an activist with the Scottish Unemployed Workers Network. I have worked in welfare rights as well.
You have worked, okay. So how do you feel about this, about what's happened? Do you echo the sentiment?
Absolutely. I mean, it's just appalling. And I mean, I guess I was pretty naive about courts. I thought there was this idea that things were supposed to be beyond reasonable doubt, and clearly it's nothing whatsoever to do with that. It was to do with the preference, as we've just heard, of the sheriff, and it's one man. One man and his prejudices, and obviously if it's a bigger case, then they have a jury, but this is a case that affects someone's life. It's an important case, and yet it's one man that can make this decision, which is absolutely appalling. And even today, we came in with the report from the social worker, which was fine, and a whole pile of really nice and powerful character references, and they just really had a glance at a couple of those, and the only bit that they pulled out was a comment that's saying it was difficult to conceive of Tony using threatening behaviour, and he pulled this out and said this is almost tantamount to breach of court. So that was all that he seemed to be interested in, and just shocking.
And what are the implications for people who are campaigning, protesting, or even doing the work of welfare rights?
Well, obviously people will be concerned, and I mean, this is the second time that Tony's had police called on him for just basically telling people that they don't know the job that they're doing.
Not the second time at all. Well, police called him on 3 or 4 occasions.
Second time it's come to court, I'm sorry, yes. There's been police called on people in Edinburgh as well, and in other places.
There was a one where we were doing a live stream, and it was outside Maximus, and the client had come out for a cigarette. And
we were there, I was there.
Yeah, you were there, and they refused to let him back in, and then they said, "You've missed your appointment." And it seems that it begins with a desire from the very beginning to make the trouble, and then that trouble is carried by the police and the courts system,
Absolutely, and they're so quick to come when the DWP or their subcontractors call them, and yet if someone else is being given hassle by the job centre or by Maximus or ATOS, they're just not interested.
I mean, the whole issue about threatening behaviour, I admitted to raising my voice. I mean, we were involved in a conflict situation. You're not going into a benign situation, or a neutral situation. This is a negotiating situation, a situation where you are actually involved in a fair amount of conflict. But to prove threatening behaviour, you have to prove that a person is. It's not just a question of them raising their voice. It's also a question of them, people being left, a reasonable person being left in fear that they would actually be attacked. Now, with the best will in the world, as far as Maximus is concerned, there is absolutely no justification for the idea that at any point these people were under threat of physical attack by themselves. And what we see here is it's part of a developing narrative. Any time that you're actually challenging power is falling back on this idea that they are intimidated and that they're using the power of the state in order to push through these insinuations. I mean, actually, I think there's actually a lot of kind of similarities between the way that we're being treated by the British state and say the way that Jeremy Corbyn and his supporters are actually being treated within the Labour Party. What you do is you put forward groundless accusations, insinuations, vague insinuations of threatening behaviour without no proof whatsoever, and then that is actually used as the justification to take action. We can see this, and this is going to be an increasing tendency in my view. I think any activist, whether it's within the Green movement, whether it's within animal liberation, and there was a young chap there today who was given 90 hours community service at the same time as I was up for the iniquitous crime of actually wearing a mask in a car, in a lane, and that this was actually seen as threatening behaviour. We can see the way in which power, institutional power, is actually using the court system in order to deflect challenges and to neuter challenges to their authority and power.
Well, you said somebody was fined for wearing a mask. Did you get any more?
Well, he was actually within his car at the time.
It was an anonymous mask.
It was actually the people who were within that were wearing masks. They were, because they've been they're hunt saboteurs, and they've been found that they've been personally targeted. Right. So they just wanted to hide their identity.
And it seems like a fundamental to human rights, especially in a common law jurisdiction, is your right to privacy and your right to anonymity, which is something that, maybe since about 15 years ago, we were kind of being told to be afraid of anyone's anonymity and anyone's privacy.
Yeah.
Because if someone wants to be private, it's only because they're hiding something which is a threat to you. Obviously, that's.
But with regards to my own situation, we've seen the consequences of it just in the immediate aftermath of the sentencing, because the SUWN and ECAP and other supporters from Glasgow went down to conduct a protest, an orderly, peaceful protest at the public building, which is the Maximus Assessment Centre, and I was invited to join them. I went down, stood by the picket. I was then approached by the manager of the assessment centre, who informed me that the police were on their way. I then left after being asked to leave by some of my comrades, and the police duly arrived, were inside for a fair bit of time, left the assessment centre, did not speak to the picket. I don't think it was the picket that were actually going there to see, I think it was myself. Now, my understanding is that any bail conditions that are applying to me were actually lifted following the sentence. So, as far as I am aware, I am guilty of no crime, apart from protesting, both at the allegation of false claims against me, and also protesting against the continuing abuse. That's because that's the only words I can actually use to describe it. The continuing abuse of people who are going through the mincemeat machine that we call the work capability assessments. Only yesterday, I was actually approached by a woman who suffers from grand mal epilepsy. She's frequently has attacks. She attended a work capability assessment about 2 weeks ago. Was actually telling me this is on top of other health conditions. She's in receipt of DLA and has been for a considerable period of time. But people, as a matter of course, are finding that they're actually attending these work capability assessments and are systematically being denied access to employment and support when it's absolutely not obvious that these people are not in a position to do it. So what's the real crime? Crimes are actually being committed by the ESA. That is our position. And the DWP should be in a court of law over some of the horrendous examples of abuse that we have actually documented. And if the police are looking for criminals, then go down to the ESA assessment centres, because that's where the real criminals are. They shouldn't be bothering publicly minded, civic-minded citizens who are actually volunteering to attempt to try and help some of the most vulnerable and disabled people within your society.
Okay. Maybe we maybe talk to somebody that was involved in the demonstration that happened
yeah, sure.
afterwards. Sorry, what's your name, sir?
My name's Mike from Edinburgh Coalition Against Poverty.
Okay.
And
so you went down to the demonstration just after the court announcement.
Yes, yes. Some of us from Edinburgh Coalition Against Poverty has been coming up regularly to support Tony, and there was a few of us there today, both at the court and at Maximus, and we just think it's really vital to give Tony solidarity, because this is really an attack on all claimants' rights, because all claimants have got a real need to have the right to be accompanied to not only disability benefits assessments but to interviews at the job centre.
Yeah. So how are you feeling about this? And obviously we just heard there about the security got involved, manager got involved, the police came down. And how do you feel about protesting now? Is it a nervous time? Are you worried about accidentally being arrested for anything?
Right, well, in Edinburgh Coalition Against Poverty, we do the same frontline advocacy that Scottish Unemployed Workers Network do, and we regularly accompany people to job centres and to Maximus and ATOS disability benefits assessments, and we've actually had the same kind of problems, the same sort of attempts to stop us doing this that Tony and the Scottish Unemployed Workers Network have had. For example, in February this year, one of our members of ECAP was accompanying a claimant to High Riggs Job Centre in Edinburgh, and the G4S security guard physically stopped the advocate going in and actually assaulted him. So we had to then think what to do, and what we did was we called a demonstration for the next time that the same claimant was going back for his interview at the job centre. So 2 weeks later in March, there was 50, 60 people at High Riggs Job Centre, including a lot of people from Dundee and Glasgow. Tony was there himself. And this time the DWP totally backed down and recognised the right of the claimant to be accompanied by the advocate from Edinburgh Coalition Against Poverty. So we think that's the way to go. That, if they try and clamp down on us, we fight back by getting a lot more people to come the next time.
Yeah, now I know welfare's a devolved, not a devolved issue, what's the other words? Reserved. It's Westminster that deal with welfare.
Yes.
It's not the Scottish Government, but is there any support that you're getting from the Scottish Government at all? Or none? Have you applied? Have you spoken to ministers or?
Right. Well, in Edinburgh Coalition Against Poverty, our main response is to seek support from other grassroots groups. Some welfare is, of course, being devolved, such as personal independence payment, which is, as a lot of people will know, one of the main disability benefits. And we actually had a demonstration at the Scottish Government just a few days ago as part of a Britain-wide day of action over the issue of the unfair PIP assessments, and we're demanding to the Scottish Government that they cover the disability benefits that DLA, Disability Living Allowance claimants, have lost in the course of the transfer to PIP. Over this particular issue of advocacy, you would hope, if the Scottish Government believed in social justice, that they would intervene, but so far I don't know if they have. Maybe that's something Scottish Unemployed Workers Network know about.
Do you know anything about that, Sarah?
Well, I mean, they're very aware, and we keep them very aware of what's happening. I mean, Chris Law gave a personal reference for Tony, character reference today, so our local MP. On the other hand, it's Police Scotland who are, running to when the DWP asks them, and this is also an issue that we have raised with the SNP, is that drawing attention to this, and that Police Scotland should not be acting as a sort of
an agent.
security guards for the DWP. so, you know, we're very much in communication, and we'll always try and push them to do the most they can do, and we'll certainly criticise them when they don't. So.
Okay. Well, is there anyone else who wants to make a
I'd just
contribution
like
to this, or would you like to say something?
You know, the amount of support that we've had, which has just been so important. So, you've spoken to Mike from ECAP. There's people behind me who are through from Glasgow.
Yeah.
So that's both the Glasgow anarchists and Castle Milk Against Austerity folk have come through today. We've had, there's been demonstrations in support right across the UK, and we've had messages from beyond the UK, and it's just so important because people do recognise the importance of the issue, but it's important that people, you know, these are people who are actually living solidarity by coming here and giving it to us. It really makes the difference, not just people just saying it, but actually living that better society, and I think that's really, really important that we keep doing it. And also just a point which actually Mike raised outside the court, that the best solidarity as well is for more and more people to get involved, so that they can't just pick on one or two, because there's a lot more people stepping in to do it. And, you know, on the whole, you don't get arrested, and you do it, but we would always recommend that, you know, you record what's happening, maybe you even clandestinely record stuff. But,
or live stream it.
But, you know, you make absolutely sure that you have a record of anything that happens in these places. But I've been in quite a lot into the work capability assessments, and it's a really important thing to do. It's important to check that the right questions are asked, and it's important to record what happens, so that when people get a letter giving their view of what happens, and it's the complete opposite to what actually happens, you can help them prepare the appeal for the next stage, because an awful lot of people who get knocked off ESA, they do appeal. They make it really difficult. It's a two-stage process. They now make people go through a mandatory reconsideration, which is an internal thing, and then there's a separate appeal. And just, you know, to make use of being on this here now, to say to people, for goodness sake, take it right through to the appeal, because the reason for the mandatory reconsideration is to try and discourage people. A lot of people succeed at appeal because a lot of people are being knocked off who shouldn't be knocked off.
Yeah, okay. Tony, would you like to maybe just conclude?
Yeah, basically need justice, no peace. I mean, my own feeling is that we are on the front line of the fight against welfare reform. It's an increasingly bitter fight. It's increasingly serious in that folk are being criminalised, and this is not the end of it. You know, we're going to see much more of this. I think we're moving towards a general clampdown. You know, we can see that the political situation's in flux with Brexit. The political classes are panicking. There's a fundamental lack of confidence in the political institutions and government institutions, and we're going to have to challenge them. And by challenging them, we're putting ourselves in the line of fire. The fact of the matter is, we're like the canaries in the mine to a certain extent, because we're the first to actually feel it, because, you know, we are on the front line of the front line. You know, and what we're saying to people is, we're opening up of the welfare state to becoming a much more being transformed into a much more punitive system of labour control and punishment, then what that's actually going to do is actually draw more people into the issues, you know, because for everybody that's on working tax credit is actually going to be affected by, you know, universal credit. They're going to be at risk of sanctioning. So what we are potentially looking at is the opening up of potentially an issue that's as big as the poll tax. You know, the fact of the matter is that for too long, unemployed workers have been closed off in solidarity for people who are actually working. That, you know, artificial barrier is going to be broken down through the welfare reforms. And the point that we're making, the wider trade union movement, and those that are working, is they're coming for you as well. And they're not coming for you in a good way. You know, what the welfare reforms are about, I'll repeat this point, it's not about welfare reform. This is about fundamental change in the nature of the welfare system, from one that's about welfare to one that's about controlling and disciplining. And that is what we are actually facing.
Okay, thanks very much. That's a very raw